Welcome into episode 3 of the Fourth and Whinges podcast with your hosts Mark and Rob. We're running a couple of weeks behind in this podcast for various reasons. So for those of you who have been chomping at the bit, here you go. Here is episode 3. In terms of what we're going to touch on today, we're going to talk about a couple of these things have been in the news for a little while, but we obviously haven't been live for a couple of weeks, so we wanted to just catch up really on a couple of these points. First one being the Sam Darnold trade to the Panthers, so we're going to talk about that. Also going to touch very lightly and very carefully on the Deshaun Watson situation. So those of a nervous disposition maybe tune off at that point. And then we're going to look at, Rob, you've got an interesting character that you've come across that's eligible for the draft this year, or he's going to enter the draft this year. So we'll talk about him. Mm-hmm. And then we have come across an interesting article within PFF that I think it was published today, which talks about the critical points within the draft, the upcoming draft, and key picks that will determine how the rest of the draft goes, basically. So we thought it would be good to kind of go through that and give our opinion on those topics, really. Given that we're only a week away or so now from the draft.
Exciting.
And then that should about cover it. I think there's a whinge of the week at the end that comes from myself, which again ties into the draft. So it's very much a draft-heavy podcast this week, being a week away. So with that, we will start off by talking about the Darnold trade. So do you want to kick off then, Rob, and talk about the Darnold trade?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the draft's only a week away, exciting times. It seems to come around very quickly. It seemed like it was miles away, then it's kind of just come firing towards us now. So yeah, very excited about that. Obviously, one of the bigger trades that went down that does influence this draft was a trade that the New York Jets made. So trading Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers. So in terms of the trade was the Panthers 2021 sixth rounder, so the 6th round pick this year, and then a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick in 2022, so next year. So first things first, I think it's obvious that if we all knew it beforehand that the Jets are going to stay put at number 2, and the smart money is on them drafting Zach Wilson there.
Yeah.
Which makes all the sense in the world. They're obviously moving on from Sam Darnold. Joe Douglas, the current GM, didn't draft Darnold. Robert Saleh's obviously only just taken over this year, so they're not tied to Darnold in any way. Yeah. Gives them a blank canvas, go away and get a quarterback that they believe in, and obviously we kind of think that'll be Zach Wilson. Yeah. I think it's probably good value for the Jets. Obviously, it gives them some more pick. It gives them an extra pick this year. Gives them a couple of extra picks next year. From the Panthers side of things, I think they were one of the teams that will be going hard at pick number 3. Obviously, got jumped a bit by San Francisco there, so they felt like they had to make a move. What I like about it from the Panthers' point of view, though, is I don't think it precludes them in any way, shape, or form from taking a quarterback this year. They've given up a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick next year. So yes, they will. I think they've already taken up Darnold's 5th year option, which again makes sense. But from a risk factor, if Trey Lance or Justin Fields falls to them at 8, Lions are 7, you've got to take them. Got to take them. Just keep taking a swing at a quarterback. You can never have too many quarterbacks. No. Worst case, Sam Darnold is amazing, and then you don't need your other one, so you can flip him. But I'd just keep taking a punt at quarterbacks. Keep taking it. For the Jets, I think they've got a good return on it. They've probably done as well out of that as they possibly could. I don't know. I was maybe thinking a 3rd round pick this year might have done it. Obviously, they held out for more. I think they've done quite well.
Well,
what are your thoughts are?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because I may be a bit more pessimistic about this on for both sides, actually.
Okay.
And I think the reason is that from the Jets' point of view, I think they've done the right thing. They've moved on. Absolutely, they've done the right thing. What I heard, though, that earlier on they potentially turned down a 1st round pick that was offered to them for Darnold. And the reason, again, I don't know how true it is. It's stuff that I've read online, whatever.
I'd love to know who that was.
Could be a load of nonsense, but apparently somebody offered a first-round pick. And the reason that they turned it down was that at that point they hadn't done all their due diligence on these quarterbacks. So they weren't in a position to say that there was a quarterback that they were more happy with moving forward than Sam Darnold. Now, if that's the case, my view on that is, if I'm the general manager, I'd be thinking, you've had all year. You've had all year to sort this out. You know who Darnold is. And if that's genuinely happened, I think they've messed up big time. If it's a load of tosh and the second-round pick and a fourth-round pick and a sixth-round pick this year is the best offer that they got, then obviously it's fantastic news from the Jets' point of view. From a Panthers' point of view, I genuinely do not believe that Sam Darnold is in any way, shape, or form better than Teddy Bridgewater. So for me, they have thrown away a lot of picks. Now, that's because I've never been a Sam Darnold fan. He could still obviously prove me wrong. I'm more than happy for him to do that because I like the Panthers and I want to see them do well. So, but genuinely, I don't believe he's any better than Teddy Bridgewater. I had a bit of a crush, as you probably still remember, on Bridgewater coming out of college. I'm higher on him still than many people are. Yes, he's somewhat of a game manager, but you can do a lot worse, and I just don't see the value in the extra picks that they've given away. Fine if you want to move on from Bridgewater. Yes, I understand they tried to make a push for that number 3 pick and weren't able to land that. The Falcons are probably not going to, in a million years, trade with them in the same division. So I understand their need and the desperation. And obviously we say that you should, and I agree with your point before, that you should keep throwing picks at quarterbacks until you land someone, yes. But for me, I just have never seen it in Darnold, and I just don't see it happening. But we will see. The proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah. He's only 6 months, I think, older than Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
So, he's been in the league for quite a while now. I'm going to stick up for Sam Darnold a bit because I think he has been harshly treated. I'm a lot higher on him than some are, to be honest. And I almost don't know why myself. And I'm inclined to agree with you. Teddy Bridgewater, obviously from what he's come back from as well, fantastic. And I just think there's still a chance with Darnold, and I think it's worth taking a punt. He's still young, and I know he seems to get the benefit of the doubt, and I know he has a load of excuses. So Adam Gase, his coaching staff that he's had around him, he's had nobody. He's changed. He's had 4 different head coaches, at least 3 different head coaches, I think. Different schemes. Yeah. When I think was it towards the end of the 2018 season? I think Jeremy Bates was the offensive coordinator. They streamlined the offense a lot more, did a lot more, RPOs, sort of made it a lot smaller, made it a lot easier for him, which is generally what you would do with a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback. He's never had any running game. He's had nobody running there. Frank Gore was their leading back last season. I think he's had to. You are sorry.
Reach a Hall of Famer.
Well, absolutely, yeah. No, I'm a big Frank Gore fan, but he's had to put that team on his shoulders, and he's been incapable of it. But he's had a lot to deal with, and he's not had a good environment to learn his crafting. And I think you get him in a new environment. He'll have Christian McCaffrey to lean on. In Carolina, he's going to be throwing the ball to DJ Moore and weirdly Robbie Anderson, who he's already thrown the ball to. But so he'll have better receivers. Matt Rule, obviously coming from Temple and Baylor, college coach. He's got a lot more of those. It should be a much more quarterback-friendly offense. Got Joe Brady there as the offensive coordinator. If it doesn't work next season, then yeah, absolutely. But I really do want Sam Darnold to succeed. I know there's a thing about him seeing ghosts. I know he's sort of plays scared a lot, but part of me just thinks there's a chance, and I'd like to see it. And like you, I like Carolina. I'd like Carolina to succeed.
No, I get the argument. I think the thing that I have trouble pushing past is that I just didn't rate him coming out of college, and I think when you, and this is why the Panthers will have gone for him, because they will have had their scouting department will have had a higher grade on Darnold than I have, and therefore they, like their past thinking, will be impacting their decision. My past grade on him is impacting my decision, in that I didn't rate him to start with, so why would I give up draft picks for him now? So that's where I'm coming from. But I do agree with you that from a coaching point of view and a scheme point of view, he hasn't had the best opportunity yet. And I do think that, like you say, with Joe Brady, at least for next year, because if he does do well, then he'll end up getting a head coaching job, and then it'll all change again for Darnold. So I don't see the future being that great, even if he has a good year. Because he'll then be put in another difficult situation with presumably somebody who's not as talented as an offensive coordinator in the following year. So, I don't think the long-term thing is going to be there, and it would not surprise me if he's not there after his 5th year. But yeah, that's just how I feel about that situation, really. But I think from the Jets' point of view, I think it's what they needed to do, and they've done absolutely the right thing. And I am fully prepared for them to take Zach Wilson and let the good times roll in Jets Kingdom. I can't wait to see that.
I don't rate him.
He's going to get obviously the starting job from week 1. He's going to anyway. Yeah, we're not talking about the Jets, and
we'll just do an hour on the Jets.
But I'm giddy for him because I think obviously that's what we think is going to happen. Okay, so that's the Darnold trade. The second thing, as I mentioned, is I wanted to briefly, and we will be keeping it brief, touch on Deshaun Watson and his current predicament that he's got himself in. And mainly I want to touch on it from the point of view of the fantasy football and the fact that we don't know the ins and outs of what's gone on. We probably never will, and that's fine. The longer it goes on and the more I read, the more I hear, the more I listen to other podcasts and things, the more I'm thinking it doesn't sound good. And I just think that thankfully, I don't own Deshaun Watson in any of my fantasy leagues. And I know this is something way bigger than fantasy football, but the thing is, I don't want to go there. You obviously feel bad for the people involved all around here, and it's not a good situation, but I want to keep it purely fantasy football, and talk about that. And I think if you've got Watson, you need to be making moves and preparing for the fact that you're not going to have him this year, at least, in my opinion. I think you're obviously unfortunate enough to have him in our Dynasty League. So, you can maybe touch on what you've done so far, the moves that you've already made, or what you might be looking to do because of that. Because I think you're of the same opinion, aren't you, that it's not looking good for him this year?
No, I agree. It's not looking good. And as you've said, it's clearly a very serious situation. We're not making light of it in any way, shape or form. We're just we don't want to get into the ins and outs of that. And like you say, it's a terrible situation all around. But from a purely fantasy football angle, it is interesting. I still think he's a hell of a player. So I'm happy long term. Given it's a dynasty format, I'm more than happy with it. I won't be looking to trade him away. If he goes on the commission exempt list, I can fill one of my bench slots with him, and that's fine. So yeah, in terms of what I've sort of done so far, I traded away Russell Watson. That turned out to be a pretty good move. Did that about 2 days before these stories surfaced to Tom.
That's Russell Wilson rather than Russell Watson, right?
Russell Wilson, not the opera singer. Yeah, I'm on fire tonight. Russell Wilson, sorry. Yeah, if I'd have traded away Russell Watson for some first round picks, I've been made up. So yeah, traded away him, which didn't turn out to be great. But I'm not panicked too much. I think within fantasy, the quarterback position can get overrated. I think we were probably all as a group guilty of overdrafting quarterbacks within our league. There was a run on them, I think, at the end of the second, start of the third round. And given that it's not a QBR league, it's not a 2 QB league, it's not a super flex league. I think we probably all went a bit soon. Yeah. Obviously, if you get that quarterback, you then don't have to worry about it for years and years and years. But I think there's people that can fill in. I'm quite happy. I know you don't like this. You don't think this at all. But I've got Jameis on my squad, and I can see him taking over the starting gig at the Saints. He's had Sean Payton coaching him. I think. Well, the fantasy numbers he put up with the Bucks in his final season was insane.
I don't like it necessarily as if I'm a Saints fan necessarily.
Well, not me either.
I don't think the wins will be there necessarily, but from a fantasy point of view, I think he could be golden. I mean, he proved in that year he last played for Tampa. He he finished highest in yards, I think, and potentially even touchdowns, and he just throws a lot of picks. So you have to take that with it. But I'm pretty sure he was top 2 or 3, if not the top, in terms of fantasy points, just because he threw for so many yards and stuff. So I think he more than adequate as a short term plug, I think.
Yeah, I picked up Carson Wentz that I'm not overly excited about, but he's gonna start for the Colts, certainly for a season. And I think, if Watson is definitely going to not play in some games next season, let's say he doesn't play in 8 games, let's say he doesn't play in half of them, I should have people to cover it. Just thinking back as well, not that long ago, that Zeke had similar allegations. Well, not quite as serious allegations, but similar in nature. Nothing went to court. Nothing was proven. All charges against him were dropped, and he still got banned for 4 games. Going even further back, Big Ben got banned for quite a large number of games a good few years ago now. So, regardless of what happens, there's the allegations have been made. I think the NFL will act. So,
no, I agree.
Just go from there. I don't really want to force anything draft-wise. Stick to my plan. And, worst case, maybe that quarterback position's not quite as good for me next year. But certainly a rookie quarterback isn't going to cover me short term anyway. Longer term, I still think Watson will play. If Michael Vick can come back after the dogfighting incident, then there's still going to be a place in the league for him, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so for those of you who are in that position, you can tune back in. Hopefully nobody was offended by that section. So no, we'll move on to talk about the draft. Obviously, like we said, it's about a week away now, pretty much bang on. And you've come across an interesting character that you wanted to talk about. Yeah,
just thought rather than we will dive into the draft in more detail very shortly and go through some of our picks and how we see the draft folding out, obviously, but just something that you don't often hear about, a bit of a different thing. I'd like to talk punters, if you'll indulge me.
Should have worn my t-shirt. I've got a
punters of people too.
Punters of people too t-shirt. Yeah.
They are. So just an interesting story I came across. It was on CBS Sports about a guy called Zach von Rosenberg. So he's currently the punter at LSU. He's draft eligible. He's 30 years old actually, so he's obviously a fair age. He's had quite an interesting life already. He was a highly touted prospect within baseball as a pitcher. So he signed I think he received over $1 million signing bonus from the Pittsburgh Pirates as a pitching protege.
Right.
He pitched in some of the minor leagues for them, but then a shoulder injury kind of put paid to that career. So he's already a millionaire. So he's already a little bit different to all the other people he's going to school with. He sort of bounced about quite a lot, I think, because he was a pitcher. They tried him out at quarterback. His shoulder was still sort of precluded him from progressing at that. He then added 40 pounds to his frame and he tried out at tight end. And then one day, I think during practice, at the end of practice, his coach just came onto the field and just saw him just punting the football out of sheer frustration, but absolutely bombing it. So he's 6'5", 245 pounds. He's obviously a lot more mature than any of the other punters that are going to be coming out of the colleges at the moment. He's had a very unusual career arc. He's already got that money, so I think he could give you quite a bit. Obviously, for special teams plays, if you fancied any trick plays, any fake punts, he does have a bit of an arm, and he has played quarterback. He's got that pitching experience. But I just thought it was very, very interesting, and just to go through what he's gone through, playing at LSU. I think he's been there for 4 years now, I think. I just thought it was a bit of a different story.
Definitely.
So, he's had a great career as well. I think he made the SEC all-freshman team in 2017, punted for 4 years, averages 44 yards per punt. I just think it'd be interesting to see him go. Obviously, punters don't normally get drafted, but there's a bit of buzz, if you will, and it's a very little buzz. It's kind of like a. I think they're on about him maybe going in the 7th round, but he's 30 years old. He can still give you 10 years at that age.
that's the thing I was going to say. At that position, it's kind of ageless to a degree. You could get 10 years out of him in theory, or even if you got 8 years, even if you get a rookie contract out of him at the end.
Yeah,
of it.
exactly.
It's definitely an interesting story, and I wonder if it'll get mentioned on like the coverage on draft night and things like that. I assume it will do at some point.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Especially if they, on day 3 when they're always clamoring for stories and fillers to keep that four round day going. So I'm kind of eagerly awaiting that so we can see some clips of him and everything. But definitely
wait for the name, Zach von Rosenberg. You heard it here first. Well, unless you read the article on CBS Sports. But just as a final thing to finish off on, he is one of his friends, I think, is a graphic designer for Disney, and he encouraged him to keep a journal of all his trials and tribulations. So he's kept a journal all throughout his sort of the past 10 years of joining the baseball leagues and then bouncing around and everything and where he is now. So watch out for a screenplay coming to you. It could be the new Blind Side or something.
Absolutely. Exclusive to Disney Plus.
Yes, maybe, yeah.
So there you go. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens, because this is 7th round. This is where people do take flyers on people. There was the German wide receiver. Was it
Moritz Boehringer?
Yeah, Boehringer, and that was in the Vikings. Probably no reason to actually take him, but they did in the 7th round, and they gave him a whirl. And there's been, other people in the 7th round that people, rather than trying to get them as a priority free agent, they just kind of use the 7th round pick on, rightly or wrongly.
And I think this year the later rounds are interesting because I think only 150 people got invited to the combine this year. Usually that's about 300. So quite a lot of the lower round prospects and the later round prospects, nobody has any medical details on them. Nobody has those measurements on them. They're going to have to go on how they measured at college, and they're going to be way out of whack, way out of date. So I think you might try and see some teams dumping maybe later round picks. You might be able to pick up a bargain if you're confident in your scouting. And yeah, certainly, just take a flyer on somebody. You're not losing anything. I mean, the Titans released Isaiah Wilson the other week, and he was their 1st round pick from last year. Nothing is set in stone.
It's a massive lottery, is the draft. As much as people want to claim that they, they're good at scouting and all the rest of it, it's a massive lottery. And so at the end of the day, in all seriousness, I know we're talking punters here, but a decent punter can change a game.
Absolutely.
It's not a glamorous position, but trust me, I was really nervous when the Chiefs lost Colquitt when they decided not to pick him back up, because I was thinking he's been a stalwart for however long, probably 10 years or so, and if not more, with the Chiefs. And when I heard that we were getting a new punter, because not only do they punt, but they're the holder, and so that they do have an impact on games. They have an impact changing position, they have an impact on field goals and extra points. They can make or break games.
Because if you've got somebody that can, if you're having a bad game and they can tilt that field and down a punt inside the 10 or something, you're onto a winner there, right? You're inside the 25, get that nice big spiral, keep it high, give your team plenty of chance to chase, and all of a sudden you're putting your opponents under pressure. So absolutely, it's a key position.
So let's look out for him. I don't know if he'll be turning up in any of my mock drafts, but
do you know he's on mine? We can go through it later. I have 2 punters going in the 1st round.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, if anyone's going to take him early, it'll be the Raiders. Well, they love drafting a punter.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, Marquette King,
don't they? Right. So the next topic we're going to talk about, again, we're going to keep it draft related. And this is I came across this article earlier on today on PFF, Pro Football Focus, and it's tagged up as 2021 NFL Draft, the biggest decisions that will shape day one. So basically what they're doing is they're talking about the key points at the top of the draft. We all pretty much are sure that we know who's going number 1. The bookies are pretty much not paying out on anybody else other than Trevor Lawrence. The bookies are also, got very, very short odds on who's going number 2. So we think we know what's happening with 1 and 2, but then from there on, there's some key points, some key picks throughout the draft that are going to shape what happens. And I thought it was an interesting subject to talk about, some of these positions and how you think it'll go versus maybe if I've got a different opinion there, and maybe also sort of factoring into it what we think might happen versus what we would do potentially, which is always the debate when you're talking about mock drafts. So the first thing that they talk about in this article is Kyle Shanahan's quarterback decision. So we think we know, as I said, who's going number 1 and number 2. The 49ers have obviously traded up to number 3. You don't give away the picks that they gave away and move up that many positions to draft a non-quarterback. So it's going to be a quarterback. So it's kind of who they decide to go with. And assuming it's Lawrence and Wilson that are off the board, you're looking, of course, at Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. What's your opinion on what you think will happen at number 3?
My opinion on what I think will happen, everything is pointing towards Mac Jones, isn't it? So everything you hear, everything you read. Obviously, Shanahan attended Mac Jones's pro day. Watched him. He did not attend Justin Fields or Trey Lance's pro day. However, they're having second pro days that he's going to attend. So I think at the moment the smart money is on Mac Jones being the choice there. And I think if you look at Shanahan in the past and where he's had success, so I go back to when he was at Falcons with Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, he's not very athletic. He's clearly very athletic, but he's not a runner. He's just, he's a pocket passer. He's incredibly accurate and he's incredibly intelligent, and he makes those reads. He can make every throw on the field. That's the kind of quarterback that he seems to like. When the Niners were in the market for Kirk Cousins before he went to the Vikings, and Shanahan was there when the Redskins drafted Kirk Cousins. So he does seem to have a type of quarterback he prefers, and the passer in this draft that's most like that is Mac Jones. I think everything points towards Mac Jones. If I were them, I would take Justin Fields. But believe it or not, Mark, I'm not an NFL general manager. It's only a matter of time. But where's your head at with it?
My head, if we'd have been doing this podcast 2 weeks ago, everything that you've just said then I would have reiterated. I would have said absolutely 100%. Now I'm leaning towards more of an opinion that I think the Mac Jones thing is just a massive, massive smokescreen. And I believe and I also think they will take Justin Fields. Apparently the odds, Mac Jones was the odds-on favourite for number 3, and he has been for about 2 or 3 weeks. But apparently that switched earlier in the week, and now Fields is the favourite to go number 3. So, or at least he was a day or so ago when I was last.
Listening. Sky Bet have him at 11-8 on. So
yeah. So I think that has changed, and I think for me, I get the argument for Mac Jones with everything that you said there around, running an offense, being reliable. Shanahan's system can make quarterbacks better, and I get why he would potentially be a good fit there. However, isn't Garoppolo that type of quarterback? And for me, Justin Fields gives you, yes, he may, some people are trying to bring him down with certain things that he can't do or hasn't done or didn't do in one game or whatever. And for me, I just think, no, there's enough there. There's certainly enough there. This time last year, it was who's going number 1, Lawrence or Fields next year. That was the discussion.
This time, a few months ago, even,
So I think he's fallen for some reason quite a bit. Now, am I a massive Justin Fields fan? Not necessarily. I think there's a definite drop off between the first 2 quarterbacks and Fields and the rest. But I do think he is the better of the 3 quarterbacks that are left, and just what he can do with his feet,
with
what he's seen, what he's done at a high level, in college. For me, give him that edge. He's done it for multiple years. Yeah. I think, and he's not necessarily had the same talent at wide receiver, etc., etc. So for me, Justin Fields is the right pick. For me, Trey Lance doesn't come anywhere near that discussion. I am not a fan at all from what I've seen.
Trey Lance makes me nervous.
Yeah,
he makes me nervous.
The more I watch, and the more I think about Lance, I'm not convinced he's even in the discussion. So for me, it's Fields all the way.
Definitely. You look at that offense and what Fields could do. It just gives you that athleticism. You're pairing him with Deebo Samuel, and you can do so many different things. Just opens it up, gives you so many different options. And he's a winner as well. He's played at Ohio State for a good number of years. Trey Lance, through one game he played last year, and he's playing at Division II level at North Dakota State. There's no comparison, like you said. There really isn't.
No, definitely not. I think it's probably closer now, just because we've had so long in between Jones and Fields, just because we've had so long for people to debate it and want to say something different. And I think that's potentially what's happened here. I think Fields is the right pick for me at number 3.
Agree. Yeah, totally agree.
So then the next point, you've got obviously Atlanta sitting at number 4. And prior to me finding this article, you wanted to talk about this topic anyway. So I'll let you kind of take the lead on this one, really.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is where the draft starts, to be honest. I think 1, 2, 3 we're set. We're definitely going to be quarterbacks, and it'd be really interesting to see what the Falcons do here. So you've got a brand new general manager is it Terry Fontenot, I think. Brand new head coach, so Arthur Smith, who was at the Titans last year. What do you do? I think your options are basically you take a quarterback, but in that case, you're going to be taking, in theory, the 4th best quarterback in this draft, which is still probably better than most drafts. It's could be the number 1 pick in some other drafts in leaner years. But are you in love with him? I don't know. Your other choice is you take the best player available, and I think for me that's Kyle Pitts. You could argue everywhere for that, but I think you're looking at probably Kyle Pitts, or you trade back. I think the thing that makes it difficult to take a quarterback is, as I said, you're looking at that 4th best quarterback. We were just talking there about Trey Lance. I would have Lance ahead of Mac Jones, would I? Maybe on the cusp, but Lance does make me nervous, as we've just said. He'd be the fourth quarterback taken, unless you're absolutely in love with him and you know everything about him. I don't think you can take him. I also don't think you can cut Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan's contract, he's 36 years old. So in an ideal scenario, you're thinking, we're not going to be picking here again soon, or we certainly don't want to be. Let's get our quarterback of the future in. But looking at his dead cap hits for the next couple of years, if they were to cut him this year, before the 1st of June, they'd incur a $65.4 million hit. After the 1st of June, $24.9 million. If they cut him next year, pre-June the 1st, it'd be $40.5 million. Post-June the 1st, $24.9 million again. And the big benefit of having a rookie quarterback is his contract. So are you going to give up 2 years of a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract?
Yep.
I don't think you are, for me. So unless you get some sort of Godfather offer, if you get a good offer for the 4th round pick, I think for the Falcons at this point, it probably makes sense to trade back, acquire assets for next year. Maybe gives you a bit more ammunition to move up if you like, a quarterback next year. And I know it's maybe not as good of a quarterback draft, but this time last year, Zach Wilson was not certain to be the starter of BYU. So there's always somebody that emerges. I think for me, I'd just be looking at taking Kyle Pitts. I think I absolutely love him. I just think he's fantastic. He's one of the greatest prospects we'll see for a while. He can do absolutely everything. He's just phenomenal, and he's that guy. So, I think Arthur Smith, a couple of tight end sets last season at the Titans with Anthony Ferguson and Jonnu Smith, pairing with Hayden Hurst. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. You've then got, you've got Matt Ryan, you've got Julio, you've got Calvin Ridley. You've got a hell of an offense there. Add Pitts to that with Hurst and everything. I think you can make some serious moves. Plus, if they trade down, they've got needs sort of on the defense, a cornerback. There's good cornerbacks in this draft that will be available later on. So I think you probably get somebody top of the second and I just don't think there's anybody else like Kyle Pitts. So for me, I'd be taking Kyle Pitts.
I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think for me, early doors and in a lot of the mock drafts that I've done, I've had them taking a quarterback. But as you quite rightly point out, it doesn't quite feel right for them to take a quarterback this year. The cap hit that you talked about, the fact that, in theory, with the new guys coming in, they'll want to see if they can get Matt Ryan back to what he's been capable of in the past, and he's by no means over the hill. He's still got it in him, I think, to produce. So if you do, like you say, draft a rookie quarterback, which is the right thing to do from a succession planning point of view, especially like you say, given that they probably won't be picking this high again, I just don't see how you. I know Rodgers is probably the exception, and when we did it with Mahomes for a year, but it doesn't really happen these days. And if how long would it be into the season if Ryan doesn't play well or the Falcons aren't winning before they'd feel the need to throw the person in, and then you've got this massive cap casualty thing, and I just can't see it happening. And the more that I think about, for me, and Mac Jones as a succession, he's very similar in certain ways to Matt Ryan. So, yes, you might be getting the quarterback of your future in terms of age, but are you progressing? Are you getting better at the position with Mac Jones? Probably not. No. Lance, if he hits the so-called kind of ceiling of what he could be, then you potentially are. But I'm just not there. So I agree. I don't think quarterbacks, in play. I do rate Pitts. I think he's very good. I'm not as high as some. Potentially, and that's not necessarily a slight on Pitts. It's more of a thought process around just tight ends in general being picked high in the draft. It doesn't happen that they just don't live up to it. Pretty much, any of the ones that you've seen in the top 10 over recent years, the likes of Eric Ebron and others, haven't lived up to that billing. And to pick number 4, a tight end, I think it's really rich.
My only argument against that would be put WR against his name, then, because I think.
Well, I don't. If you do that, I don't think he's the best wide receiver in the class, so I still wouldn't take him. I think if you want to take a wide receiver, you take Chase, you check Jamar Chase, you don't take Kyle Pitts. So for me, there's not really a position where I would contemplate taking Pitts, unless I can't do anything at that position. Then maybe if I can't trade out, then maybe it becomes a discussion. But I would be clamoring for somebody to come up and give me something. And I think if in terms of how, but for me, it's very key as well how far you move down, because you don't want to move down too far. And like the Dolphins did, which they moved down and moved back up again because they wanted one of the blue chip players. I think the Falcons, they're not going to probably be able to move to 5. I don't think that necessarily would be on the cards. They're not going to probably move to 6, although I have heard rumors that the Dolphins are potentially, in play to move up. I don't know what that's all about. But, I think if you can get a trade partner that's at 7, 8, Detroit, Carolina, Denver. If any of those people are talking, I think Denver's obviously the biggest shout. If Denver want to come up and you can get a first round pick and more from
different conference as well.
Yeah, exactly. From them, then I'm all for that, and I think that would be the best thing to do. Failing that, I'm probably taking Pitts because you don't necessarily need Jamar Chase in that offense with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, although how many years has Julio Jones got left? I don't know. Maybe Chase would be a shout. I'm not sure, but I'd be hoping that I could trade out.
I think you're right, to be perfectly honest. I'm letting my love for Kyle Pitts blind me. But yeah, I think probably trading back. If they trade back to, say, 9, you can pick up, I don't know, Patrick Surtain there at cornerback or somebody of that ilk. You're probably getting maybe an additional second as well. That gives you some more flexibility further down the draft. So I think, all in for that does make the most sense, to be honest. But I'd still take Kyle Pitts.
So the next sort of point is again straight after really, and it's a really interesting debate that seems to be on every podcast I listen to. So why the hell should we not talk about it as well? And that's Cincinnati at 5, and whether or not they're going to go receiver or tackle. So are they going to help protect Joe Burrow so he doesn't get injured again? This is the narrative that I'm hearing. Or are they going to help him in a slightly different way by giving him a number 1 wide receiver that can get open so quickly that even if he hasn't got that much time to throw the ball because the protection's breaking down, he'll still be able to get the ball out quickly because Jamar Chase is going to be open straight away. That's the kind of debate. And I've listened to so many debates on this on various podcasts, like I say, where they're talking about this. And for me, it's a coin flip. It's so close. They're both, I suppose one of the things here, so that in terms of the protection, we're talking about the potential here of taking Penei Sewell, the tackle from Oregon, or the other tackle that's
Rashawn Slater.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater of Northwestern, I think he is. I think that's right. But those are the two that are in play if you're talking about tackle, I believe. And as I said, for me, some people are banging the table on it. It's like, it's so obvious you have to protect Joe Burrow, otherwise he's going to get another knee injury next year. How do you even talk? But I agree with the concept of, Chase gets open, and the more open your wide receivers can get, the faster they can get open. It also helps that. And there's not to say that you, by taking Chase at number 5, you can't go and get a tackle later on in the draft, or you can't trade for a tackle. There's still a couple of tackles out there available at the moment, free agency tackles and things like that. There's other things that you can do. So I think for me, I'd probably be leaning towards Chase because you've got the element of they know each other from college. They had a fantastic year together in 2019 at LSU. I would be leaning that way, but if they take a tackle, I get it. And I think it's very much a toss-up. I know that people below them, I think immediately below them, will probably be hoping that they take Sewell, because I believe Miami would gladly take Chase if he was available. So I think the rest of the teams immediately below them would want them to go that way. But then I think there are some other teams a little bit lower down, maybe like the Chargers, who were hoping take Chase, leave Sewell, and let Sewell drop down a bit further so they can get him to protect Herbert. So I think it is a key position, I think, in the draft. I think it's going to determine a number of different outcomes later on.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. They did sign Riley Rife in the offseason as well. So they do have somebody at tackle. They've got Jonah Williams, who's going to, he'll be in his 3rd season, but only his 2nd because his 1st was out injured. So they do have a bit more protection there. As you said, there are tackles available later in the draft. I think it's a bit of a drop-off. So if you don't take one in the 1st round, I don't think Vera Tucker's going to be there. I don't think Tevin Jenkins is going to be there. Maybe your mate Sam Cosmi might be if he doesn't get snapped up by the Chiefs. But it depends. I think Alejandro Villanueva, I think, is still a free agent. So you can't get some help that way. Yeah, I can see it both sides. I've got to say, just to repeat myself, if the Falcons don't take Kyle Pitts, then I think the Bengals should, because you've got T. Higgins there, who's your number 1 receiver at the moment. You've got Tyler Boyd, who I think is a very good receiver. You've got Burrow, you've got Joe Mixon, and then at the moment they've got CJ Uzomah. If you can then add Kyle Pitts to that, and that's the last time I'll say his name on this podcast. This podcast, not in future, but I think that would be great. So yeah, I certainly see the argument for taking Chase. You can pick up a tackle, and Chase is transcendent. Like you say, he's got that rapport with Burrow from LSU. I think Chase is the only one that I would consider taking over Sewell, to be honest.
Yeah, I do agree there in terms of Pitts. I think that then they're probably in more of a need of a number 1 tight end than they are a number 1 wide receiver, like you say, with having Higgins there. And I'm nervous from a fantasy football point of view if they go and take Chase as to how many targets that's going to take away from Higgins, because I've got him and he's kind of my number 1 receiver. So there's a little bit of nervousness there from a fantasy point of view for me. But I think what you're going to probably see is Atlanta take Pitts, even though I don't think necessarily that's the best way for them to go. But I think I don't know that the quarterback needy teams that are left are going to trade up for the fourth best quarterback, like we said. And I think Pitts will probably go there, which for me, then I would be taking Chase all day long. And I worry about my tackle later on. So then I think the next pick underneath there is then obviously number 6 with Miami. I think for me they've traded back up, like I said, on purpose for one of those blue chip players. And I think whoever is left out of the 3 that we've just been talking about, whether that be Sewell, Chase, Pitts, whoever's left goes to Miami, in my opinion. That's
totally agree.
I can't see anything else happening at that point. They've traded back up for a reason, and I think it's for one of those 3 players. Knowing that quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3. I think that's what they're doing there. So there's nothing really to talk about there. So the next kind of key point really is Detroit. And I think these, for me, they're the hardest team to mock in anything that I've done out of the top 6.
They're very easy to mock.
Very good. I just don't have a clue where they're going, and hence that we might mock them. But I just don't know what they're going to do. I seriously don't. I think that there's so many needs on that team. I think I don't necessarily know who they're going to be thinking about. It's a new regime coming in, et cetera, et cetera. I just have no idea what's going to happen there at 7. And I think if it was me, again, I'm probably looking to trade out if I can, just because the more picks you have when you're a poor team, the more lottery tickets you've got, the more chances you have of hitting on draft picks if you're picking more draft picks. So I think that would be my my first choice. That's what I would want to happen. But if I have to sit in there and pick because nobody's going to come and dance with me, I think maybe this is where we see defense go for the first time in the draft this year. Maybe we see somebody like Micah Parsons at linebacker. They've been linked with him quite heavily, I think. I think he's a brilliant player. Can't obviously comment on some of the off-field stuff that you hear. It's difficult to do that. It's difficult to understand that, especially this year where you're just not hearing as much because of access to players through COVID, etc. So I think I think we're probably going to see a lot more busts this year than we have done in previous years, because it linked to that fact that people just haven't been able to spend the time with players. So I think they're a massive wild card here, and I have no idea what they're going to do. They could pick anybody, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see which way they go.
I think you've got to give Jared Goff somebody to throw to. They've got, I think the only wide receiver that's on their roster from last season is Quintus Cephas, who was a 5th round pick last year. Didn't exactly set the world.
It's quite a deep draft at wide receiver, though.
True. Fair point.
I think I agree. They definitely need to add wide receivers, definitely. But for me, just I'm really high, as I've said, on Chase. After that, I don't believe that Smith or Waddle are in the same league. So for me, picking this high up, I probably don't want to go there. But if their scouts believe that Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle are in the same ballpark as Chase, then yeah, I can see that happening.
That's a good point you make there, actually, Mark, to be honest, because it is deep at wide receiver, and I think there's going to be a lot of value in the early second, actually. I think there's going to be a lot of value there. So yeah, you've won me around there. I get that, actually. So yeah, maybe you do go, best player available. I think Parsons is obviously definitely going to be there. A bit of a defense. I do worry for. I mean, I know that's kind of the plan with the Lions, but if I'm DeAndre Swift, I'm going to be facing a lot of stacked boxes. They're going to say to Jared Goff, "All right, throw it then, beat us through the air, show us what you can do." We had it with the Jags for a lot of years where Fournette would, I don't know, he's not an amazing player, but he did pretty well for the Bucs last year, where he's just all the time. He just couldn't get anything going because they were just stacking the box,
Yeah.
stacking the box, and trying to get Bortles. I think it's a very similar thing. I wouldn't rule out taking a quarterback from the Lions either, to be honest, at this point. I don't trust Goff. I don't particularly like Goff. I don't particularly rate Goff at all. And if they, if Lance or Jones or Fields or whoever's there and they rate him and they like him, then, like I said earlier, take a swing, get somebody else in that building. You're building long term. But I agree, if they could trade back down, they'd love to do that and just acquire some more picks.
Yeah, I think it's a good chat actually from a quarterback point of view. I hadn't really given that much thought to that. I think Lance, this might be a spot for Lance on that basis that you've traded for Goff. Have you mainly done that to get rid of Stafford and his contract or whatever? Potentially, I don't know, but then Goff's got quite a big contract, I believe. So
I think they've done it for the picks, haven't they? Really, that was fun.
So I think and so maybe quarterback is there, and if it is, maybe you do go with Goff this year and let Lance sit for a year. I think it's probably not a bad shout, but I think for me, you definitely wouldn't be touching a wide receiver. I think come back top of the second round and do that. When you'd hope that there'd be the likes of Terrace Marshall,
give it away,
Elijah Moore. There's so many good wide receivers that I think are going to be available at the top of the second round. I think that's what they should be doing there.
You're absolutely right, and I'd just like to apologise for my ridiculous pick. I was absolutely wrong. You were absolutely right, and I don't know what I was thinking.
It wouldn't surprise me if Smith was the pick because he's the Heisman Trophy winner, and he's seen by a lot of people as the number one wide receiver. So
his size worries me. What is he, 170 pounds? And he's not the biggest. He's gonna. For the Lions, he's not going to be in a good situation. They've got nobody else to throw to. I think he'd draw all of the coverage. He'd be drawing the number one cornerback all the time. Then he'd have Jared Goff throwing it half a mile over his head or half a mile to the left or right of him. It's not a good situation for him. But yeah, you're right, because there's so many. You said Terrace Marshall, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore.
Yeah,
there's loads. So yeah, the second round does make all the sense in the world for that.
Yeah. So then after that, the next kind of really interesting point that they make in this article is they talk about the teams that are chasing quarterbacks. So basically the remaining teams outside of the top few that are probably looking to get a quarterback this year. So we're talking the Broncos, the Patriots, the football team, and the Bears. Those are the teams that kind of desperately, well, not necessarily desperately need one, but in some cases they desperately need them. And I think they're the teams that are going to be looking to potentially trade up if they can get a partner to acquire that kind of number 4 or number 5 quarterback if possible. The Bears obviously in the more difficult position. I think they're the lowest of those teams.
20, I think, early the Bears.
Is that what they are? 20, yeah. So that's obviously they've got a fair way to go if they're going to get up into the top 5, 6, 5, 6, 7, something like that. But it's doable if they really love one of those 2 quarterbacks. But again, that's the problem that they're going to have. They're going to be moving up for, as we said before, the 4th or 5th best quarterback, and therefore I'll be very interested. Denver obviously are the highest in the draft, so they do have kind of the easiest jump to make. But similarly, they will be the most nervous because they'll be nervous of other people jumping above them. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I would like to see. I've mocked it so many times. Mac Jones going to the Patriots. I'd like to see that happen. I really would. I think it would show kind of intent from Belichick, and I'd like to see that happen. I'm not convinced it necessarily will, because I don't think he'll want to give away future picks to do that. So I do think that Denver are probably the most likely. But I also think that Mac Jones in Denver is I think it's probably the perfect landing spot for Jones, in that wide receiving core there with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy,
KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick.
Patrick. Yeah, they've got, and then they've got Noah Fant at tight end. They've got the weapons that are showing up Drew Lock and his inability there. He's got a good talent around him and he's not the future. And I think Mac Jones there could potentially slip in and do really well. And obviously enhance the interest in the AFC West from a Chiefs point of view. So I'd be all for that happening. Obviously you've got the football team as well that I mentioned, and obviously they've got Fitz for this year, but after that, who knows, what the future holds for Washington. We've touched on it in a previous podcast about our kind of love for Fitz, and we'd want to see him do well and keep that job and have a real run in that team. But in all likelihood, it's probably not going to be how it goes, and so they're also a contender, I think, to move up.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to what you just said, Matt. I think you've covered it beautifully. Excellent job.
Yeah, and then the last point they make in this article is about the Colts, and I'm not massively. I've never really thought about this as a kind of a key point personally, but they're kind of that they're apparently one of the teams that are still looking for a left tackle, but outside of that, I think they've got a fairly well-rounded team. Obviously, they've made the move to go and get Carson Wentz this year, so you'd think they're definitely not looking for quarterback play. But I think what will be really interesting is to see if the Colts, look to get weapons for Wentz, because I'm going back to when he had his really successful year when they won the Super Bowl that year. He was playing really well before he got injured. And the kind of wide receivers he had at the Eagles that year were all big-bodied, kind of tight wide receivers and tight ends. That he had 2 tight ends, and he was throwing to those players, those big bodies, because he's not necessarily the most accurate of quarterbacks. And I think if they're going to try and get him back to his best, I think that's probably what they're going to need to do. So I think they don't really have anybody at quarterback for me that's kind of built like that. So I can see the Colts potentially looking for one of the bigger bodied receivers. And I think Terrace Marshall for me is probably the ideal candidate there. So I think I've penciled him in one of my most recent mocks for the Colts. So I think that would be interesting to see if they go there, or whether they do look for one of the tackles if they slip. Or maybe even they go edge. I think that's potential another thing. But the edge class this year we could do a whole podcast on that. For me, it's a really interesting subject, the edge players and what will happen with those guys.
It's funny you said edge, actually, because I did a mock earlier today and I had Jalen Phillips going to the 21. That's who I placed there. But I think the one point I would make is that Chris Ballard, since he's been there, he's drafted incredibly well. I think it's 2017 was his first draft. He's always picked. I think 2018 was the best one he's had. Picking up Quentin Nelson, I think took him 5 or 6. He's all pro guard. Darius Leonard, again all pro linebacker there. Last year he took Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor. He's taken some great players. I don't think he doesn't strike me as a GM that's going to reach or a GM that's going to panic. I think he will probably sit there and he will take the best player available. Maybe we don't know how he has that board ranked, but in terms of tackles, like Tevin Jenkins potentially being play at that point. I think you've got I think probably Elijah Vera Tucker. I don't really have him. I mean, I could see him going as high as the Giants 11, but I don't think he probably makes it past Miami at 18. So it depends how they have that next tier ranked. I don't know. But yeah, I think Ballard. I trust Ballard. I think he's made some great picks. He's been a very good pick, a general manager for them. So you're right. We'll be interested to see where they go. Terrace Marshall will be a good pick. I think, like you said, they're in a good position. They don't have many holes.
No.
They've got a good roster. I know we all have our concerns about Carson Wentz, but when he was on form, he was fantastic, and he's landed in a very good situation there. And I think the Colts are in a good position just to take.
Yeah, definitely. I think
best player on the board.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what they'll do. You'll find out who is the best player on their board. They're not a team like like some who will just go reaching for people who clearly don't deserve to be in the first round or anything crazy like that. I think, you'll see them pick a solid player wherever they go. I think it'll be somebody like Marshall if he's available, or it'll be potentially Edge. Whoever they think, because I think again, if their number one edge is there, and because everybody's all over the place with edge defenders, I think it would make sense. Whether that is Jalen Phillips or not, who knows? But yeah. So that kind of wraps up that discussion, really. Hopefully, there's been some kind of some good talking points there for those of you listening, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree with some of the things that we've said. I know there's a lot of debate out there around some of those early picks. So if you do have thoughts or think we're talking nonsense, please get in touch and do let us know what you think. It'd be interesting to hear some other opinions.
Definitely.
And then finally, because we're over an hour already, so we'll keep this very brief. But my whinge of the week, again, it is draft related. Obviously, you can clearly see I'm a Chiefs fan. Talked about it before, and my whinge is I'm really nervous about this draft and just generally the way that the Chiefs have drafted in recent years. I'm going to read out some names for you now, and I want you to be honest and tell me whether you think these, whether you just simply whether you've heard of these players or not. Right?
Okay.
So here we go. Khalil McKenzie.
No.
Tremon Smith.
No.
Armani Watts.
No.
Darwin Thompson.
Yes.
Rashad Fenton.
Yes.
Okay, it's better than I thought. Thacarius Keys.
No.
Kalen Saunders.
Oh yeah, Kalen.
All right.
No. That was a massive no.
Dorian O'Daniel.
Who?
Dorian O'Daniel.
That's a great name, but no.
Lucas Niang's a bit different, but
yeah.
Anyway, those are some of the. Those are about 10 or so of the 20 picks that we've taken in the last 3 years.
I thought it was your yodel delivery drivers.
And you've not heard of sort of any of them. And don't get me wrong, yes, they are more 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round picks. I get that. But when you within those same 3 drafts, of the 20 picks that we've taken, the only real starters that we have in that list are Juan Thornhill when he's free, when he's fit. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's it. You've got Mecole Hardman, who's probably a number 3 or a number 4 wide receiver. Nick Allegretti filled in at guard last year and played actually quite well. Derek Nady, actually he's probably another starter that we've got there. But in 3 drafts to have sort of 3 starters, it just makes me really nervous. I don't think we've drafted particularly well under Brett Veach. The reason I picked those 3 drafts is because those are the 3 drafts that he's had as GM. So, he was technically there potentially when we took Mahomes, but he didn't do the legwork on that. I don't believe he didn't kind of make the decision as such. I don't believe. And anyway, even if he did, just because we got Mahomes doesn't mean to say he's a great GM. He's done well fantastically well to get the quarterback, but overall, we haven't drafted that well, and I'm really nervous about where we go. I think we've got a glaring need at tackle, which I think we're being forced into taking at the end of round 1, which I'd never like to be forced into a situation where you've got to take a certain position, because obviously we don't pick again until the end of the 2nd round, and you're not realistically going to get a starting left tackle at the end of the 2nd round or onwards. So I think we're kind of forced into that position if we can't find a free agent from somewhere. Just makes me really nervous, and we're so used to kind of picking. We seem to go heavy on D linemen all the time, and cornerbacks later in the draft, and I just it's a weird strategy, and I don't see I don't see enough quality picks happening from the Chiefs' point of view. You take Mahomes out of the mix, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are now. Obviously, it's an obvious statement, but just from a draft point of view, we're just not one of the better teams at drafting, and it does make me very nervous, kind of heading into this year. Really, that's my.
You'll get no sympathy from me whatsoever.
No, this is the thing, isn't it? Anybody listening who's not a Chiefs fan is just going to go boo fucking who. You've been in the last 2 Super Bowls. Get on with it. But I am just thinking longer term. We're maxed out from a cap point of view. We need.
That's the big concern, isn't it? It's the cap.
And without doing that, without hitting on the next couple of drafts, we're going to be in serious problems. Where we have arguably the best quarterback in the league, but it's not a one-person game.
Not to dwell on it, but you're right. And I think that's the issue that the Patriots have had. They've not drafted well for a good number of years, and they're in a similar position.
Yeah. But whinge over. And sorry for all you Bears, Raiders, Houston fans out there who are listening, who just want to tell me to bog off, probably. But yeah. So anything else you want to kind of touch on, or are we're about good to go?
I think we're good to go there. Yeah, I think we've good chat. Just to add that, next time around we're going to look to do a mock draft between the two of us. So look for that coming next week, pre-draft. Like to hopefully do it this week and get it up early next week. So looking forward to that. It'll be interesting. Yeah. Definitely. And great chatting with you, mate. Thanks for your time. Yeah, no worries. Cool. So as Rob said, look out for that next episode. We'll be doing a mock draft. We may even potentially we could do it live, as in direct to YouTube. There and there go. That's an option, but we'll maybe do that, or we might record it and put it out just before the draft. We'll make a decision on that at the weekend. So that about wraps up today's episode. And again, that's all that's left to say. Is thanks for tuning in. We hopefully gave you some good content there, and with that, 4th down conversion, we'll say goodbye and see you next time on the 4th and Whinges podcast. See you next time.